Well, I am so excited today to have the host of the Bible for Kids podcast today. You guys, Mike and Sarah, welcome to the Collide Kids podcast.
Hi, Christen. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, this is so fun. It's fun for us to be on the other side of things. So this is really special.
I know. Whenever I'm on a podcast, I say the same thing. It's a different feeling to be the one interviewed instead of the one that's
There's
doing
not
the
as
talking.
much preparation, which is really nice.
That's true. That's true. You don't have to worry about how it sounds or what happens. You're
No,
like,
you just show up and answer questions. That's all you got to do.
That's right. Would you guys just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm Sarah Humphrey. I am a mother of three, a homeschool mom. So we were actually doing school a little bit earlier today.
Nice.
I'm an author. I'm a guest teacher at Pure Barre where we do, exercise for women. I do a lot of little things. I like to garden, anything creative, really, draw a little bit, write a little bit, always with kids and in my neighborhood most of the time.
Nice.
I'm Mike Nawrocki. Your listeners might know me as the voice of Larry the Cucumber, which, it's never too far away from the microphone. A co-creator of VeggieTales. And, it's been a number of years since I've worked on VeggieTales, but in those years, I've, started teaching. So I'm a professor at Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. So I teach film and animation there. And then I also have a new book series out, The Sea Squirrels. And we've actually just wrapped season 1 animation based off of that first series. So excited about that. And married, my wife Lisa, and we've been married almost 30 years, 29 years now, and we have 2 kids, and they're grown and out of college, and so we're kind of new empty nesters and entered that season of our life. So
that is very cool. I love that. And I love that you're Larry the Cucumber. I have to say, Larry Boy theme song is one of my favorite songs still.
Oh, nice.
I know you didn't sing it, but
the OG one, the one with
OG, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I can kind of sing it, but it wouldn't be the same because Larry is not the one who sings it. So.
Right. Yes, but I do. We all grew up on VeggieTales, and there's still some VeggieTale fans floating around. There's some new versions and some people that are introducing it to their kids. So
it's so cool as I see the newer and newer generations. I mean, 4 or 5 year old kids who are watching VeggieTales, and I'm like, all right, yeah, it's still going, which is really cool.
That is cool. All right. Well, I'm excited to talk to both of you today. But before we get started in our conversation, because this is a show for kids, I always make my guests tell me a joke. So, or something funny. So if you've got something for us today, I'd love to hear it.
I've got one. And then maybe Sarah could go, why did the cucumber cross the road?
I don't know.
Because he thought he saw the hairbrush. It was sitting right there. But he went over and it was gone. I bet you couldn't tell that I just made that up just now.
I know. I was pretty curious how it was going to end.
I'm sure you have a much better joke, Sarah.
Well, I don't know if it's much better, but we do this thing whenever we go on family vacation. When our waiter comes to the table, we give our waiter a riddle. And we'll give him a big tip if he can get the riddle right. Wow. So we're about to go on vacation. So I was looking up a couple. So this is one. Let's see how it goes.
Okay.
What has hands but cannot clap?
Is that a clock?
Oh, how did you get that? Did you Google it?
Okay, so here's a riddle. So when I was in high school, I was taking an architectural drawing class, and the teacher said, "Okay, I'm going to give you guys a riddle, and if anybody can answer this riddle anytime throughout the semester, I'll give you an A." And the riddle was, why is a mouse when it spins? Why is a mouse when it spins? So everybody wanted to get A, so we were racking our brains about it. And we would guess certain things and you go, nope, that's not it. So finally we got to the end of the semester and we said, okay, well, what's the answer? He says, there's no answer. It's just I was just making up something stupid.
I just wanted to see you guys bothered by it for a while.
I was like, touche.
I can figure it out. That's good. I remember when I did education as my major. And so if you're an education major in college, you have to go back to school and you have to do like a student teaching. And I interned at the school I grew up at, and I was sitting in the teacher's lounge next to one of my English teachers. And she made this comment like, you know, whenever the kids say, I'll say, oh, it's time for a pop quiz. And the kids will be like, what? You didn't tell us that. And she's like, I did it. I had no idea. And for the longest time, I really thought that she was like one of the craziest, dumbest teachers. But she was just playing us that whole time. So the power that teachers have. Like, I was
That's
like,
right. Just playing.
devastated in college to learn that she had lied
And
to
how
us.
dare you not tell your students about a pop quiz?
I
Right?
know. She's like, I forgot to tell you guys. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was her thing. So that was fun. All right. Well, let's talk first about your podcast, because we were saying this before, like the people that listen to podcasts are people that listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And so when you're already listening to podcasts, you're always looking for a new one or something fun to
Yeah.
add to what you're already doing. So how did you guys get started with the Bible for Kids podcast?
Well, so Dan Lynch is somebody that Sarah and I both know. He's actually the producer of our podcast, but he's also our literary agent. So he's been representing us for a number of years. And so the podcast was actually Dan's idea, and it was born out of the desire to help serve the need that was met largely by Christian bookstores for so long, where folks could walk into their local Christian bookstore and say, okay, you know, what's new out there? You know, what books can you recommend? What kind of resources are available for my child who I'm trying to bring up, with a biblical worldview. And, you know, with a lot of Christian bookstores going out of business and a lot of that business going online, the idea was that if we could have a podcast where we have authors on that have new books coming out, new resources, not just authors, but musicians, anybody who kind of creates stuff for kids that helps bring them up in a biblical worldview. That's what we want to do. So largely, it's a show for parents about resources that are available for their kids, and so that's
Very
sort
cool.
of the big idea around the podcast. And so I did it. We've done it for a number of years now. Amy Parker and I started off the show, and then Amy went to law school and got really busy, and so
Wow.
that's when Sarah joined a couple years ago now. Sarah, is that
A little over 2 years. Yeah.
yeah? So Sarah's been joining. So it's fun. So we just it's a weekly podcast. We speak with one author a week, or one musician, or one actor, or whatever field of kind of art they're in, and it's great. And hopefully we just help parents just know what new resources are available out there for their kids.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think I agree. Like, my favorite place to go was the Christian bookstore, and I would just walk around, look at book titles, and always looking for new things that were coming out. And so to not have that as a resource anymore, it's hard to know what's out there.
Right.
And Barnes and Noble has a very small little section for faith-based content, but you
Right.
never
And
know if
probably
it's right.
the people that are working there don't really know what's what. And as
Right.
far as that goes, where, the folks working at the Christian bookstores would be able to, give you the inside scoop on stuff and you'd be able to ask them questions. So, and there's still some great bookstores around, but
Right.
they're few and far between now.
Yeah.
And one of the fun things about the podcast, too, is you kind of get a behind the scenes look at the author. Well, I say author because typically it is an author of some sort, but you get to hear kind of some of the things that went into the project before it actually bloomed or got on a shelf or, was available for order, which I think is fun for moms in particular who are
Right.
looking for those resources, because you get to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and find out, like, how was this made? What inspired it? What was the story behind this book or project or song or VBS curriculum, anything like that. And it's just nice to know where your products that you're teaching your kids come from. So I think the podcast is unique in that way.
Yeah.
It's because people can hear from, the person who created it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot of times too, maybe, aspiring authors, it can be interesting to them too, because what we run across time and again is folks saying, well, when we ask, why did you write this? The answer is, well, because I was looking for something and I couldn't find it, about this. So I thought maybe I'm the person that needs to write this. And so that can be really motivating for folks who saying, hey, here's an idea that I have that I don't see out there. So maybe this is something that I can write and see if I can get out into the world.
Yeah, that is cool. And I've had the privilege of interviewing a lot of authors as well. And I love that. It's something that you get really close to that person. Like, I don't know about you guys, but every time I interview someone on my podcast, they are immediately my best friend after that. And so,
yeah, that's
you know,
right.
and
Yeah,
so because you get to know them and their story. And I love hearing people's story about, you know, where these ideas come from or where they came up with their content and why they're so passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of content, you guys both have some books and things that you've put together. So Sarah, you have a devotional. Well, you have a few books. Tell us a little bit about your books and how you got started in writing.
Sure. Well, I got started in writing actually by simply journaling. It was probably like 25 years ago where I felt like the Lord really put it on my heart to start just writing every day, like just several pages of whatever was on my head went on to the paper. And after I had done that for like, I don't know, maybe ten years or so, he asked me to go back through all of my journals, like find the ones from childhood all the way through this process and reorder them in chronological order. So I did that. And then I ended up writing basically my autobiography from my journals. And I kind of put it into more of like a creative journal that was mostly for like my kids because I wanted something for them, you know, a long time from now. When I have great grandkids, they could pull out my audio file or that book and be like, "Oh, this is where great grandma came from." You know, like story told by her.
Yeah.
So I did that, but then there was a lot of content in that was like I could turn this into a devotional if I make it really practical. So I took just different kind of ideas from those original journals, and that's where my very first book, 40 Days to Joyful Motherhood, came out of. And then other opportunities came from that book being published. It was just 40 days of like little devos. One of them being Solomon Says Devotional, which is for 8 to 12-year-old children. And it's a devo that goes through 100 of the Proverbs. And I wrote that with Amy Parker, who was the co-host before me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we all have that, you know, literary agent in common. So that was a really fun project because I actually stepped into a book of the Bible and then wrote a devo from that. So I like to write just in a variety of different styles, but most of the time I've been doing a lot of devotionals because I think a lot of busy parents might have 5 minutes in the morning to like feed themselves with something.
Yeah.
And so I like doing those short and sweet little nuggets where I feel like I've helped a parent or I've helped a child get through their day a little bit easier than, you know, maybe they would have if they wouldn't have had anything like that to read.
Yeah. I love devotionals for that because I think, especially if you're not someone that understands a lot about the Bible or you don't know where to start or where to go first, it's really good to have a devotional to kind of help you understand, help break it down, and then give you something to think about. And so, yeah, I love having devotionals. Can I just be honest? I have like devotionals all over our house. So I have some beside the table in the living room. We have a little centerpiece on our kitchen table where we eat dinner. And then I have a couple that are in each bathroom. Because what a great place to have a seat and read for a few minutes. So
a captive audience.
That's right. You know, why not get fed while you're there?
Making the most of your time.
That's right. That's right.
Give some input to the output.
I love that. There you go. That's what I'm putting. I should get a sign for that right over devotional. Tell me a little bit about why you decided, what made you want to do devotionals instead of maybe like a fictional book or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think devotionals, that's kind of just what I was comfortable with. I think that those journals, like it really was my time of where I was talking to God and waiting for him to talk to me back and writing down just kind of what was in there. So I think it was just a natural fit for me to turn that into like a small Devo style. I am working on some little kid books, more picture board books, and I am tinkering on a fictional series. So I'm playing in that area a little bit and kind of getting my feet wet. My kids are all in that like middle school. Well, my oldest has just started high school, but the other two are in that middle school range. So I've been like picking up the books that they're reading, that are fictional and just kind of like getting a feel for it. But it's new for me. So it's fun, though. I'm having a good time, and I'm just learning kind of a little bit about story and figuring out how to kind of work a fictional story or narrative into my daily life with what's happening kind of around me and in my neighborhood. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm tinkering there a little bit.
I love that. That's cool. I just interviewed Andrew Peterson, who wrote
Yeah.
Wing Feather Saga, and I'm like, how did you come up with all these fictional like plants and animals? Like, it wasn't just these characters. It was he created a world, and he just said it was just fun to kind of use your imagination, and you get to be in control of the story and in control of what the world looks like. And so I think that's cool when you have that power. So Mike, tell me a little bit about your books. I love the title, Dead Sea Squirrels. Where did that come from?
Well, yeah. So the title occurred to me first. I'm always a sucker for a bad pun. And so I thought that would be great. Actually, making VeggieTales for all those years, one of the lines that we drew in the sand early on was to never depict Jesus as a vegetable. For obvious reasons, right?
That's good. That's good.
Do that. Yeah, we were pretty irreverent with VeggieTales, but we had enough reverence to figure that out. Right. But it limited the number of New Testament stories that we could tell. We told, the Christmas story and the Easter story in creative ways, but, we had to really watch how we did that with VeggieTales. But I wanted to have a kind of a concept that would be a great vehicle for New Testament stories, tell about the life of Christ and the apostles and the early church, and the disciples. And so that title occurred to me, and I thought the general idea was, what would it be like, kind of like Encino Man, if you saw that old movie from the 80s or 90s. What would happen if a character from the first, or characters from the first century were sort of frozen in time and then discovered, in the modern day? And so that was the kind of the genesis of that. And so the overall kind of idea is Merle and Pearl Squirrel are a couple of first century squirrels, or an old Jewish couple. Merle, has always wanted to take a vacation to the Dead Sea because, he heard that you can't sink. They live up in Galilee, so they come down the Jordan River, spend a couple hours on the shores of the Dead Sea and figure out, oh my goodness, we're going to die because it's so hot and so salty. And so they go into a cave, but they get stuck there. And of course, they're encrusted in salt. And, eventually they sort of dry out and petrify. And flash forward 2,000 years later, Michael Gomez is on a summer trip with his dad, who's an archaeologist, and Michael wanders into a cave, kind of like the little boy who discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right.
Michael walks into a cave and discovers these two salt-encrusted, dehydrated squirrels, and he thinks they're super cool, and he sneaks them in his backpack home with him to Tennessee, and he sets them up on his dresser to so they don't stink up his room. He opens up a window. That night it rains, and they rehydrate and desalinate and come back to life after 2,000 years. And so they've got these stories from this first century to share with Michael and his friends who are in the 5th grade and going through things that 5th graders go through. And so there's a biblical lesson that we share every book in the form of a flashback, chapter to the first century, that helps Michael and his friends deal with, their dilemma in the present day. So it's a lot of fun. There are 12 books out right now. In the
wow.
series.
Okay.
So it's a whole, and those first 12 books tell a complete story. So it's a series, sort of a cliffhanger at the end of every book, but that sort of wraps up in the 12 books. And I've actually started writing a new a set of 12 that'll be coming out fairly soon. So it's just been great, and I've loved doing it. I'm a trained screenwriter, and so for me, like getting to write prose, it was really it was kind of intimidating at first, but then after a while, it's like, wow, this is really fun. You have to be so economical as a screenwriter, because you're just imagining, okay, what is this going to look like and what's going to be communicated visually. You don't have to write that. You just have to write, what you're going to see and and hear. But it was really fun. I just really, really have enjoyed the process of, I get to write what the characters think. You can't do that in screenwriting, or I get to, have a narrator who says some stuff about stuff. So,
right.
It's been a really, really fun process. And then in the midst of all that, because, I have such a big background in animation, while we were, in the process of publishing the books, I started, animating the books as well. And so we have an animated series that's about ready to come out. We're still tying down our distribution deal, but we're done with animation on 13 episodes of Dead Sea Squirrels. Each of them is about, a half an hour long. And I'm really, really excited about releasing that. So it's been really fun.
That's so fun. I love that, because it's like, you get to kind of see it come to life. And the fact that you're involved in it, you get to make sure it looks the way you want it to. And
yeah,
sounds
absolutely.
the way you want it to.
Yeah. And, it was great to be able to develop the stories in the books. Because writing a book is so much cheaper than making a movie. And so being able to develop all the stories and the characters and kind of get this world, and then doing the adaptation to a screenplay, and then there's different things are a little bit different in the film as they are in the books, and it was fun to play with that. But it's just been really, really great to see it come to life.
Now, I've heard like other animators and people that have, created movies about animals. They like study the animal and they like watch the animal. Do you ever interact with squirrels to get ideas for your stuff?
The inside scoop on squirrels.
Yeah. Tell us about squirrels.
Yeah. It's so funny. We just had, I live in my neighborhood's about 8 years old now. So the trees are finally starting to get big enough to have squirrels. So it's like, oh wow, I'm just realizing that I've written this whole series largely without having squirrels around my house. So now the squirrels are showing up. So
I was actually chased by a squirrel once.
My goodness.
I was in college and I was sitting on this beautiful bench that was like overlooking this nice hillside. I don't know. I was getting away from my roommates, I think. And it was in the morning and I saw a squirrel coming towards me and I was like, oh, look, it's coming towards me. And then it didn't stop. It was like going to jump on me. So I threw my backpack towards it and it like darted and I thought it was going to, I don't know. I've never been terrified of them, but I just remember that moment where the squirrel ran at me.
Oh my goodness. No, that would be freaky because it's like, does this thing have rabies? Why is it charging me?
Why does it want to talk to me right now? Maybe it was one of those dead seas. It was.
It was just trying to tell you, trying to give you a good lesson, a good life lesson.
Story. That's
Well, I have a funny squirrel story from this morning. I have a couple that like to hang out in our neighborhood backyard. And so we have this little bird feeder where you can take like pictures of whatever animal like comes to the bird feeder. Like it's like an, I don't know, AI or whatever. Well, the squirrels like to come and get seed from birdseed from it too. And so that we hadn't like put any seed in it for quite a while. And my daughter Lucy was like, can we please get some bird seed and put it back in the feeder so that we can get some action in the backyard? Okay. So we did. We went to Walmart the other day and bought a little seed. This morning I'm sitting out there and there's a squirrel out there and I haven't seen him in a while. And I was like, oh, I missed him. So he's eating, or she, I don't really know.
Can't tell.
the feeder. And all of a sudden this like blue jay or some type of bird, I think it's a blue jay, beautiful blue tail, comes and is sitting on the fence watching the squirrel eat the seed. And the bird's starting to get frustrated because the bird wants some seeds. So
it's not called bird seed for no reason.
Starts squawking at the squirrel. And I'm watching him and he's getting a little like annoyed, like louder and louder. And so eventually the squirrel takes his paw and smacks the seed off of the house onto the ground so that the bird will go to the ground and eat it. And
wow, stop bugging me. Stop bugging me.
The bird went down to the grass and started eating the seed. Shut up. It was quiet.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Myself, oh my gosh. Like
a whole little conversation going on out here.
Yes. I'd love to hear a little bit too, Mike, about your experience in film, how you got started in that, which led you apparently to be Larry the Cucumber. So can you give us that journey of how you got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up just loving to make people laugh. I was a big Muppets fan, Jim Henson fan. I loved, Monty Python growing up, Mel Brooks movies, and I kind of my deep love was the Dr. Demento Radio Hour, which was like a radio parody music hour, and it's where guys like Weird Al Yankovic got his start. So I loved that, and so I just loved writing goofy little songs, and I became a Christian when I was about 13 years old, and we had a couple of churches that I went to had a really dynamic arts ministry, and so I got involved in plays and choirs, and eventually Sunday school. We did kind of like a Sesame Street Sunday school thing for kids, so I started getting involved with puppets, and then when I went to college, I went to a small Christian college for the first year and a half. It was a denominational college of the Christian Missionary Alliance, and every student was required to do a student ministry And I chose the puppet team because they had one and I had done puppets. And I met Phil Vischer on, Phil, who would later go on to become Bob the Tomato. He and I met on this puppet team. And so we started writing our own stuff, and he had a really wacky sense of humor like me. And so, we like to say we traveled the Minnesota countryside scaring the Baptists with our puppets. And so we hit it off, and then we both ended up in Chicago. I had fun doing this stuff, but I had no idea that this is a calling that I could do for a living and for a ministry. But but to put my way through school, a job opened up where Phil was working as a VHS tape duplicator on the graveyard shift. And so I took that and was working and going to school, but then I was learning all this new production stuff, and it's like, oh, this is so much fun. And then so I learned enough after a while. Phil and I started talking about, and he was learning a lot, obviously too. What could we use this new art form of computer animation to do what we had done with puppets back in Bible college? And for that, we needed simple characters with no limbs and no hair and no clothes, because all those things were, really hard to do on the computer. And Phil actually modeled a candy bar at first, and he had gotten married by this time, and his wife Lisa, who then would later go on to become Junior Asparagus, he said, Phil, I don't think moms are going to appreciate, their kids learning biblical values from a candy bar. It's just not healthy. And so of course, vegetables are simple and healthy. So that was the next thing. And so that's how Bob and Larry were born. And then, at first Mr. Cuke and Mr. Tomato, but then we later named them Bob and Larry. But, and then, we had done puppets. And so we just lent, a couple of our puppet voices to these characters and to other characters that we did with VeggieTales. And so, so really, kind of that all around training of, acting, performing, getting to know enough about computer animation to make our first show, and then, and kind of the production involved in that. And then, skit writing and so those short skits of VeggieTales later turned into longer stories. And then we did a couple of films and, so sort of learning how, as we went. And, VeggieTales, was born in 1993. So that's, over 30 years ago.
Wow.
So just been producing stuff ever since then.
That's amazing. I love that. Don't you love when you find those friends who are just as quirky and crazy as you are, and you're like,
oh yeah,
we're the same.
I know, right? No, that was so great. I mean, it was so such a revelation to both of us, and it's like, and we've always worked so well together creatively, and we're actually mulling over a couple projects right now that we're working on. So even though we're, I'm down in Nashville now, and he's up in Chicago, but we still talk and work on stuff together.
That's really cool. I think I saw a TikTok video a while back where someone said now whenever they read the Bible, they still have a hard time not seeing vegetables, so like they're reading about Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, and they're like, those peas, those French peas,
my
they
goodness,
come out in the story.
we had somebody that worked for us at Big Idea, and she said, you guys, I got to tell you, I got to confide this in you. My biggest fear is when I get to heaven, I'm going to be met at the pearly gates, and it's like, well done, good and faithful servant. But I want to talk to you about that VeggieTales thing.
I think you guys are going to wait just a minute before you come in.
Let's have a little talk about this.
Yeah, that's good. But I think it really made the Bible so much more approachable, and so I think that's the goal, and it just made it fun. And I'm sure you guys had no idea it would blow up and be as popular as it was.
No. In fact, kind of the idea the whole time was that we've got an ensemble cast of vegetables, and they're putting on these little like church plays of Bible stories. That was sort of the idea, So they're never meant to say, okay, this is how it happened. And a lot of times we stayed very close to kind of the main story points in the Bible and kind of the main themes, but obviously had a lot of fun outside of that. But, the hope was just to, help kids obviously know that God made them special and he loves them very much, but then also to, have this awareness of this story, the biblical, just God's story of the Bible, and have, be able to carry that throughout their lives, and then come back and read the real story and say, oh, okay, I remember this because of this. And
there's no asparagus in this story, but
there is no asparagus. Yes.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for being here today. This has been so fun talking to you. Can you let our listeners know, Sarah, where they can find out more about the Bible for Kids podcast?
Yes. I believe it's just the www.thebibleforkids.com. and you can hop on there and you can get access to all the podcasts. And Mike and Amy, you still do one for kids, right? That's narrated, I believe, on the website also.
Yeah, it's on the website. Yeah. So we actually did a kids Bible, and we've done reading of all those of a number of different stories, and I believe there's like was there 50? Yeah. So we've done a reading of all those stories as well that go along with the book that we did. So those are also available on the website for free.
Well, good. Well, I definitely encourage my listeners to go check you guys out. I think it's great. And especially if you're looking for resources and looking for just a fun conversation, to check that podcast out. All right. Well, before I let you go, I always ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So who wants to go first?
Sarah, please go first.
We used to get together every Christmas Eve as a family, my mom's side of the family, at my grandparents' house. And every year, never fails, after we opened up all of our Christmas presents, we had a wrapping paper fight. And it was always the best.
Nice.
Full throttle. People were like throwing hard and fast. And
it seems like that's always got to end badly, though. Was it end in tears?
Times it did. Times we're good forgivers. So don't back around. But that was one childhood memory that I remember it after the wrapping paper fight, then driving home. And typically it was in Ohio. So typically it was cold and there was snow, to drive home in. And just a sweet, fun, sometimes feisty memory.
That's great. I love that.
I'm always, when my fondest childhood memories, I think, are probably at my grandparents' cabin up in the Pocono Mountains. My dad's parents were immigrants from Poland who lived in Philadelphia, and my grandfather built a cabin on a river leading up to a lake called Lake Wallenpolpak up in eastern Pennsylvania, and I just would love going up there, spending the summer with my grandmother. We'd have a little boat. I'd go out fishing. We had a friend with a water ski boat. And it's just, those are the just really, I think it was really, I don't know, maybe 4 summers that I went up there, but it made such a big impact on me, just getting to spend that time with my brothers who were there, and then my grandmother. So it was a great memory from childhood.
Well, good. Well, you guys, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was great having you.
Christen, thank you so much. This is such a pleasure and an honor to be on with you.
Yes, thank you. And your questions were so fun too and thoughtful. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks.